They say you can judge a person's character by how they treat the help, but sometimes the help is the one person who's been helping everyone else all along. I learned this at 29, standing in my empty classroom after hours, watching a man collapse in the hallway outside my door. My name is Chen, and I thought my biggest problem was saving my underfunded school from closing. I had no idea that the quiet janitor who mopped our floors every night would lead me into a world of corporate espionage, stolen innovations, and a love that would prove some people are worth more than all the money they've lost. The fluorescent lights in Lincoln Elementary buzzed with that familiar electrical hum as I graded papers at my desk. It was past 8, and the building was nearly empty except for the night custodial staff. I'd been working late again, trying to stretch our meager art supplies budget and figure out how to teach creativity to 32nd graders with broken crayons and construction paper that was more gray than any actual color. That's when I heard the crash. It came from the hallway, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. I dropped my red pen and rushed to the door, pulling it open to find him lying there among scattered cleaning supplies and an overturned mop bucket. David. The quiet janitor who'd been working here for about 6 months. He was on his side, breathing hard, one hand pressed against his chest. His face was pale, beaded with sweat, and his eyes were squeezed shut in pain. David. I knelt beside him, my teaching instincts kicking in. What happened? Are you okay? His eyes fluttered open, and I saw something there I'd never noticed before. Intelligence. Sharp, calculating intelligence that seemed completely at odds with his worn coveralls and calloused hands. Can't breathe, he gasped. Chest hurts. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911, but his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. No hospitals, he said, his voice urgent despite the pain. Please. I can't, they'll find me. David, you might be having a heart attack. You need medical attention. Not a heart attack, he managed. Panic attack. Stress. I'll be okay, just give me a minute. I hesitated, but something in his eyes made me pause. Fear. Not of dying, but of being discovered. I'd seen that look before, in some of my students who came from difficult situations at home. Okay, I said softly. But I'm staying with you. I helped him sit up against the wall, then retrieved a water bottle from my classroom. He drank slowly, color gradually returning to his face. As his breathing steadied, I really looked at him for the first time. David was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that was longer than school policy probably allowed and hands that, despite their calluses, moved with a precision that suggested more than just manual labor. He kept his head down most of the time, barely spoke to anyone, and always seemed to be listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. Better? I asked. He nodded but didn't meet my eyes. Thank you. I should get back to work. It's after 8. I think the floors can wait until tomorrow. I need to finish, he said, starting to stand. The routine, it helps. I watched him gather the scattered cleaning supplies, and something about his movements struck me as odd. Too careful, too systematic. Like he was following a pattern that had nothing to do with cleaning and everything to do with staying invisible. David, I said. Are you in some kind of trouble? He froze, then looked at me with those sharp eyes. Why would you ask that? Because you're terrified of hospitals. Because you work nights in a job that requires no background checks. Because you clean like you're trying to disappear. He was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes people need to disappear, he said finally. Sometimes it's the only way to survive. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about David. I'd been teaching for 7 years, and I'd developed a sixth sense for kids who were hiding something. But this was different. David wasn't a scared child. He was a grown man who moved through our school like a ghost, and I was starting to wonder what he was hiding from. Over the next few weeks, I found myself staying late more often, partly to grade papers and partly to talk to David. He was cautious at first, but gradually he began to open up. Not about his past, but about smaller things. He noticed everything about our school, which teachers were struggling, which kids needed extra attention, which programs were getting cut due to budget constraints. You care about this place, I said one evening as we walked through the empty hallways together. I'd started helping him with some of the lighter cleaning tasks, partly to keep him company and partly because I was curious about him. "It's a good school," he said, emptying a trash can. "Good teachers. Kids deserve better than what they're getting." "What do you mean?" He gestured toward the peeling paint on the walls, the outdated computers in the lab, the library with more empty shelves than books. "This place is dying. Another year, maybe 2, and they'll shut it down. Move the kids to the overcrowded district school." "How do you know that?" David paused, like he'd said too much. "You hear things. Budget meetings aren't exactly private when they're held in classrooms with thin walls." He was right, of course. Lincoln Elementary had been on the chopping block for years. We served one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city, and despite our teachers' best efforts, test scores and enrollment were declining. The school board was just looking for an excuse to close us down and sell the property. "It's not fair," I said. "These kids need this school. They need stability, a place where they're known and cared for." David stopped cleaning and looked at me. "You really love them, don't you?" "The kids. They're why I teach. Every single one of them has potential, but they need someone to believe in them. They need resources, opportunities, hope." Something shifted in his expression. "What if I told you there was a way to save the school?" "What do you mean?" "What if someone could provide funding? Anonymous donations, grants, whatever it takes." I stared at him. "David, are you talking about thousands of dollars?" "Because that's what it would take. New computers, updated textbooks, building repairs, increased teacher salaries to keep good people from leaving." "I know," he said quietly. "I've been thinking about it." "How could you possibly know about that kind of money?" He didn't answer, just returned to his cleaning. But I caught something in his eyes. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. The next week, something strange happened. A check arrived at the school, made out to Lincoln Elementary, from something called the Phoenix Foundation. $50,000, with a note that said simply, "For the children." Principal Martinez called a staff meeting immediately. "This is unprecedented," she said, holding up the check. "I've never heard of the Phoenix Foundation, but the bank confirmed the funds are legitimate. We can finally replace those broken desks in the third-grade classrooms." I found David that evening, working in the supply closet. "Did you know about the donation?" He shrugged. "Good news travels fast. David, that's a lot of money from an organization nobody's ever heard of. Maybe they prefer to stay anonymous." I studied his face. "Like you?" He met my eyes then, and I saw something there that made my heart skip. Vulnerability. Trust. And something else I was afraid to name. "Maya," he said softly. "Some secrets are kept to protect people, not to hurt them." "What are you protecting?" "Everyone I care about." Please consider subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories if this tale is touching your heart. We share powerful stories of love, hope, and second chances that remind you that healing is always possible. Tap subscribe and join our community of story lovers who believe in light after darkness. The donations kept coming. Every week, another check from the Phoenix Foundation. New computers for the lab. Art supplies for my classroom. Books for the library. Field trip funding. Within a month, Lincoln Elementary was transforming from a forgotten school into a place where learning could actually happen. But with each donation, I became more suspicious of David. He knew too much about what the school needed, asked too many specific questions about our programs, and seemed to understand the administrative side of education better than most teachers. One evening, I decided to confront him. I found him in the computer lab, not cleaning but sitting at one of the new machines, fingers flying over the keyboard with the kind of speed that suggested serious familiarity with technology. "You're not really a janitor, are you?" I said from the doorway. He spun around, and I saw a flash of panic cross his face before he quickly closed the browser window. "I was just checking that the computers were working properly." "David, I've been watching you for weeks. You understand technology, education funding, and administrative systems. You know more about running a school than most principals." He stood slowly, and I realized this was the moment. Whatever he'd been hiding, whatever he was running from, it was about to come out. If I tell you the truth, he said, you have to promise me something. What? That you'll let me explain everything before you make any decisions. I nodded, though my heart was racing. David took a deep breath. My real name is David Chen. Not David Martinez, which is what's on my employment records. And I used to run a company called Nexus Technologies. The name hit me like a physical blow. Nexus Technologies. The startup that had revolutionized educational software then mysteriously disappeared overnight when its founder vanished. The company that had been worth billions before it all fell apart. You're David Chen, I whispered. The tech billionaire who disappeared. Former billionaire, he corrected. And I didn't disappear. I ran. From what? His jaw tightened. From the people who destroyed everything I built. From the partner who stole my innovations and tried to have me killed for them. The room felt like it was spinning. Killed? Marcus Webb. My business partner, my best friend, or so I thought. We built Nexus together, but when we were about to go public, I discovered he'd been stealing my designs, selling them to competitors, planning to push me out and take control of the company. David moved to the window, looking out at the empty playground. When I confronted him, he said I was unstable, that I was having a breakdown. He convinced the board, the investors, and even some of my closest friends. Made it look like I was the problem. So you left? I was going to fight him. I had proof, evidence of what he'd done. But then my apartment was broken into, my car was tampered with, and I realized he wasn't just trying to destroy my reputation. He was trying to destroy me. I sank into one of the student chairs, overwhelmed. So you became a janitor. I needed to disappear completely. Create a new identity, find somewhere no one would look for a tech billionaire. We're better than a struggling elementary school. But the Phoenix Foundation is funded by offshore accounts I set up years ago. Money Marcus couldn't touch, couldn't trace. I've been watching Lincoln Elementary die slowly, watching kids like these get forgotten by the system, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man, who'd been invisible for months, who'd mopped floors and emptied trash cans while sitting on millions of dollars. Why tell me now? Because I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. And I couldn't keep lying to someone I care about. My breath caught. David. I know it's complicated. I know I've deceived you. But everything I've done here, everything I've felt for you, that's been real. Before I could respond, the sound of breaking glass echoed through the building. David's face went white. They found me, he whispered. Who? Marcus's people. We need to leave. Now. He grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the back exit, but it was too late. The hallway lights went out, plunging us into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting eerie shadows as footsteps echoed through the building. David Chen, a voice called out. We know you're here. Make this easy on yourself and come out. David pulled me into the supply closet, his hand over my mouth. Don't make a sound, he whispered. These aren't the kind of people who leave witnesses. Through the crack in the door, I could see two figures in dark clothing moving through the hallway, checking classrooms systematically. They were armed. What do they want? I breathed. The access codes to my offshore accounts. The evidence I have against Marcus. They think I'm still a threat. Aren't you? His smile was grim. I'm about to be. What happened next changed everything. David wasn't just a tech billionaire in hiding. He was a man who'd spent 2 years planning his return, gathering evidence, building a case that would expose Marcus Webb and bring down the entire network of corruption that had destroyed his company. The Phoenix Foundation wasn't just about helping Lincoln Elementary. It was about creating a paper trail that would lead investigators directly to Marcus while keeping David's real identity hidden. Every donation, every grant, every transaction was carefully documented and designed to trigger financial investigations. But Marcus had figured it out faster than David expected. I need to get to the main office, David whispered. The computer there has everything uploaded to a secure server. If I can trigger the release, the evidence goes to the FBI, the SEC, and every major news outlet simultaneously. I'll go with you. Maya, no. This is too dangerous. It's my school. These are my kids' futures at stake. I'm not letting you face this alone. We made our way through the dark hallways, avoiding the searchers, until we reached the main office. David's fingers flew over the keyboard, uploading files, sending encrypted messages, triggering a cascade of revelations that would end Marcus Webb's criminal empire. But as he worked, I kept watch, and what I saw in his face wasn't just determination. It was love. Love for justice, for the truth, for the kids who deserved better, and yes, for me. Done, he said finally. By morning, Marcus will be in custody and every stolen penny will be returned to its rightful place. What about you? I'll have to testify, go public, face the world I've been hiding from. But at least I won't be hiding anymore. The authorities arrived within minutes, but they weren't there to arrest David. They were there to arrest the men who'd been hunting him. Marcus Webb's empire crumbled in a single night, brought down by the evidence of one man who'd refused to let injustice win. 6 months later, I stood in the courtroom as David testified in the final hearing of the Marcus Webb case. He looked different now, cleaner, more confident, but still carrying himself with the same quiet strength that had drawn me to him when I thought he was just a janitor. When it was over, he walked out of the courthouse a free man. More than that, he walked out as David Chen, the tech innovator who'd been vindicated, who'd proven that sometimes the best way to fight corruption is from the shadows. So what now? I asked as we stood on the courthouse steps. Now I go back to work, he said. Real work. I'm starting a new company, focused on educational technology for underserved communities. I want to make sure what happened to Lincoln Elementary never happens to another school. And thus? He took my hand, the same hand that had cleaned floors and emptied trash cans, to stay close to me. I love you, Maya. I love your passion for teaching, your dedication to your students, and the way you see potential in everyone. I want to build something with you. Not just a company, but a life. I smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought us here. I love you, too. All of you. The janitor who saw what our school needed, the billionaire who could provide it, and the man who risked everything to do what was right. Will you marry me? He asked simply. Yes, I said. But I have conditions. Name them. We keep working at Lincoln Elementary. The kids need us both. Done. And no more secrets. Never again. And you have to promise me something else. What? That you'll never stop being the man who gets his hands dirty to help people. Money changes people, but I fell in love with someone who wasn't afraid to mop floors and empty trash cans if it meant making a difference. David smiled, that quiet smile I'd fallen in love with in the empty hallways of our school. I promise. After all, some of the most important work happens when nobody's watching. 2 years later, Lincoln Elementary was thriving. Our test scores had improved, our enrollment was up, and our teachers were staying instead of leaving for better-funded districts. The Chen Foundation for Educational Innovation had become a model for how technology could be used to support learning rather than replace teachers. But my favorite part of each day was still the evening, when David and I would walk through the empty halls together. He'd traded his janitor's coveralls for business suits during the day, but he still insisted on helping with the cleaning at night. Some habits, he said, were worth keeping. You know what I realized? I said one evening as we organized my classroom. What? You never really stopped being a janitor. You just expanded your definition of what needed cleaning. He laughed, pulling me close. Sometimes the biggest messes are the ones nobody wants to see. But they're the ones most worth cleaning up. I love you, David Chen. I love you, too, Maya Chen. And as we turned off the lights and locked the door, I realized that some love stories don't start with grand gestures or perfect meetings. Sometimes they start with someone seeing you exactly as you are and choosing to stay anyway. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who's willing to serve others, even when nobody's watching. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that everyone deserves a second chance to make things right, please consider subscribing to Soul Stirring Stories. We believe in the power of love to transform lives, the courage to fight for justice, and the truth that the most important work often happens in the quiet moments when nobody's watching. Until next time, remember that heroes come in all forms, and sometimes the person changing the world is the one you'd least expect.